Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I met my ex-boyfriend 3 years ago at a coffee shop where I was working part-time while finishing my business degree. He was charming, ambitious, and had this way of making me feel like we could conquer the world together. After 6 months of dating, I moved into his apartment. By year 2, we had pooled our savings and started a small marketing consultancy. I handled the creative side while he managed client relationships. We were good together, or so I thought. The business was doing well. We had steady clients, a growing reputation, and were even talking about expanding. He had started hinting at marriage, showing me rings online and talking about our future kids. I was happy. I thought we were building something real. Then came that Tuesday night that changed everything. I had just gotten home from a client meeting when he walked into the living room holding a black hoodie. He demanded to know whose it was, his voice sharp and accusatory. When I told him I didn't know, he exploded, asking who I had been bringing to our apartment. I stared at him, confused. The hoodie looked familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. I suggested maybe it was from the laundry or that one of his friends had left it. He got angrier, demanding to know which friend and when. Then it hit me. His friend Tom had come over 3 nights ago to watch the game. He had taken off his hoodie because our apartment gets warm and must have forgotten it when he left. I explained this to him, but he called it nonsense, claiming Tom didn't own hoodies like that. I told him Tom did and that I had seen him wear it before. I suggested calling Tom to confirm, but my boyfriend refused and told me to call him myself. I called Tom right there in front of him and put it on speaker. Tom confirmed it was his hoodie and that he had been looking for it. But even hearing it directly from his friend's mouth didn't satisfy him. He accused me of coaching Tom to lie for me. I asked if he was seriously accusing me of cheating over a hoodie that belonged to his own friend. He started listing reasons why he was suspicious. He said I had been acting different lately, distant, working late, always on my phone. I explained that I had been working late because we had 3 new clients that month and I was on my phone handling our social media accounts. He started pacing around the room, running his hands through his hair. He complained about how other guys looked at me at networking events and client meetings, claiming I loved the attention. I told him I couldn't control how other people looked at me and that I had never done anything inappropriate. Then he brought up a text I had received at dinner the week before, accusing me of putting my phone face down quickly when it came in. I explained it was probably a work email and that I always put my phone down when we were eating. He demanded to see my phone. After I asked him to excuse me, he said that if I had nothing to hide, I should show him. I did. I showed him my text messages, my social media, everything. There was nothing there because there was nothing to find. But he found a way around that too, suggesting I could have deleted stuff. I told him he was being paranoid and insulting and that I had been nothing but loyal to him. This went on for 2 hours. Every explanation I gave, every piece of evidence I showed him, he found a way to dismiss it or twist it into something suspicious. Finally, he said something that made my blood run cold. He told me he didn't believe me, but that he was willing to move past it if I would just apologize and admit that having some other guy's clothes in our apartment was disrespectful to our relationship. I stared at him for a long moment and asked if he wanted me to apologize for something I didn't do. He said I just needed to admit it was inappropriate and we could move on. When I asked what would happen if I didn't, he said we would have a problem. Something inside me snapped. This man who I had built a life with, who I had supported through his career struggles, who I had helped start a business with, was demanding I apologize for his paranoia and insecurity. I told him we already had a problem, and that the problem was his lack of trust in me. I went to our bedroom and started packing a bag. He followed me and asked what I was doing. When I told him I was leaving, he accused me of being dramatic. I said I wasn't being dramatic, I was being smart, because I wouldn't stay with someone who accused me of cheating and then demanded I apologize for their paranoia. He warned me not to expect him to take me back if I left. I told him that was good because I wouldn't be coming back. I finished packing and walked toward the door. He didn't try to stop me. I stayed at my sister's place for the first few days, expecting him to call and apologize. He never did. Instead, I started hearing from our mutual friends about the things he was saying about me. My friend Sarah called me on Friday and told me she wanted me to know that my ex had been telling people some pretty nasty stuff about me. When I asked what kind of stuff, she explained that he was saying I had cheated on him and then emotionally manipulated him when he confronted me. He was also telling people I had lied about it and then ghosted him without explanation. I felt sick when Sarah confirmed he was telling people I had cheated. She said he was claiming I had admitted it but then left anyway because I couldn't handle being caught. Things got worse when I found out he was telling clients that I had been unprofessional and had abandoned the business without notice. 3 of our biggest clients called me asking what was going on. He was trying to turn our professional relationships against me. That's when I decided to stop being the bigger person. I had screenshots of text conversations where he had been flirting with other women during our relationship, messages where he complained about me to his friends, photos of him at bars with his arm around random women that he had told me were just business networking events. I also had all the financial records showing that I had contributed equally to starting our business, despite him telling people he was the sole founder. I started small. When clients called asking about the situation, I told them the truth. I explained that he had accused me of cheating based on his friend's forgotten hoodie, and that when I wouldn't apologize for something I didn't do, I left. Client after client started reaching out to work with me directly. They had always liked my creative work better anyway. Then I posted on social media. Nothing dramatic or mean, just a simple post about starting fresh after ending a relationship built on mistrust, with a few strategic screenshots attached. The screenshots showed his messages flirting with other women, and his texts to friends where he called me clingy and said I was holding back his career. Within a week, the narrative had completely flipped. People started commenting on his posts, asking about his behavior. Mutual friends began distancing themselves from him. He called me for the first time since I left. He demanded that I take the posts down, claiming I was destroying his reputation. I asked him why I would do that. He said it was affecting his business, and I told him that was good, and maybe he should have thought about that before trying to destroy mine. He said he was sorry and admitted he was wrong, that he had been insecure and took it out on me. I told him it was too late for that. He asked what I wanted and offered to give me money for my share of the business. I said I didn't want his money and that I wanted him to experience exactly what he had put me through. He said this wasn't like me, and I agreed. I explained that the old me would have quietly disappeared and let him win, but since he had made me his villain, I decided to give him a story worth telling. I hung up and blocked his number. 6 months later, I had rebranded and was running the business solo with most of our former clients. His reputation in our industry was shot, and he had to move to a different city to start over. I ran into Tom at a coffee shop a few months ago. He told me my ex had been asking mutual friends to reach out to me, hoping I would take him back. Tom mentioned that he kept saying it was all a big misunderstanding, but I explained to Tom that it wasn't a misunderstanding but rather him showing me exactly who he was. When Tom said he had really messed up, I agreed, but told him I was grateful because my ex had taught me to never settle for someone who doesn't trust and respect me. He wanted to paint me as the villain in his story, so I made sure it was a story worth telling. I moved into this small apartment complex about 8 months ago after my divorce. It wasn't much, but it was what I could afford on my teacher's salary. The place had thin walls and even thinner bank accounts among most residents, but everyone seemed to mind their own business. I was grateful for that since I was still putting my life back together. One thing that kept me sane during those rough months was cooking. My ex-husband hated anything with flavor, so for 15 years I lived on bland chicken and plain pasta. When I finally got my own place, I went crazy experimenting with spices. Nothing too wild, just garlic, chili, cumin, paprika, basic stuff that actually made food taste like something. I discovered shakshuka through a cooking video online. Eggs poached in a spicy tomato sauce with onions and peppers. It became my comfort food. The smell reminded me that I was free to eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Last Tuesday evening, I was making my usual shakshuka after a draining day with my third graders. The onions were sizzling, the cumin was toasting, and the whole apartment smelled amazing. I had just cracked the eggs into the sauce when someone started pounding on my door. I wiped my hands and opened it to find my neighbor from apartment 4C. I'd seen her around but never really talked to her. She was maybe in her 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and one of those faces that looked permanently annoyed. Her little white dog was tucked under her arm, shaking like a leaf. She demanded that I stop whatever I was cooking. When I asked what she meant, she told me that whatever it was I was making was offensive. I laughed because I thought she was joking. Who gets offended by cooking? I explained that it was just eggs and tomatoes. She pointed to her trembling dog and said he had a sensitive nose and was shaking from the smell. I looked at the dog. It was shaking, but it was one of those tiny nervous dogs that probably shook at everything. I looked back at my apartment where I could see smoke starting to rise from my pan. I suggested she maybe shouldn't keep her windows open. She called me selfish and said some of us had been living here longer than I had. She said we didn't need new people coming in and stinking up the whole building with weird ethnic food. That last part hit different. Weird ethnic food? It was literally tomatoes and eggs with some spices. She threatened to talk to the landlord if this happened again. She claimed there were rules about disturbing other tenants. I could smell my dinner burning in the background. And this woman was standing here lecturing me about cooking normal food in my own apartment that I paid rent for. I told her to tell the landlord I'd save him a plate, then closed the door and rushed back to my pan. The bottom was a little crispy but still edible. I sat there eating my slightly burned shakshuka, thinking about what she said. Weird ethnic food, selfish. Like I was doing something wrong by cooking dinner. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I'd spent 15 years walking on eggshells around someone who controlled what I could eat, what I could wear, what I could do. I wasn't about to let some random neighbor do the same thing. The next day was Wednesday, and I had a half day at school. I stopped by the grocery store on my way home and bought extra garlic, more cumin, and some hot peppers I'd never tried before. If she wanted to complain about smells, I'd give her something to really complain about. I started cooking around 4 p.m. I sauteed twice as much garlic as usual. I toasted the cumin until the whole kitchen was filled with that warm, earthy smell. I added the hot peppers and let them release their oils into the sauce. My eyes were watering from the spices, but I kept going. Around 5 p.m. I heard a door slam somewhere in the building, then another, but no knock came. I made enough shakshuka for 4 people and ate it slowly, savoring every spicy, garlicky bite. I opened all my windows and turned on my little fan to help circulate the air. The next morning I found a note slipped under my door. It was from the landlord. The note said he'd received a complaint about cooking smells and asked me to be mindful of other tenants. But then he asked if I had the recipe because his wife loves shakshuka. I wrote back explaining the situation and included the recipe. 2 days later, Bob knocked on my door with a plate of homemade cookies. He told me his wife had made them to thank me for the recipe. He also said he'd talked to the lady in 4C and told her that cooking smells weren't a lease violation unless I was running a restaurant. He said she wouldn't bother me again. That weekend, I made shakshuka again. Extra garlic just like before. I heard a door slam around dinner time, but it wasn't mine. Through my window, I saw Karen loading boxes into her car. Her little dog was shaking in its carrier when she drove away. I never saw her again. The new tenant, who moved in 2 weeks later, knocked on my door to ask what smelled so good and if I could share the recipe. Turns out she was from Tunisia, where shakshuka originated. We've been cooking together every Sunday since. So this happened about 6 months ago, and I'm still angry when I think about it. My younger sister and I have always been close. She's 22, I'm 25, and we've looked out for each other since our parents got divorced when we were kids. Our mom worked double shifts as a nurse, so I helped raise my sister. That protective instinct never left me. My sister is the sweet, quiet type. She never raises her voice, never starts conflicts, and tries to see the best in people. Sometimes I worry she's too nice for her own good. She works at a veterinary clinic and volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends. Everyone loves her because she's genuinely kind. That day, we decided to grab lunch at this popular burger joint downtown. It was Saturday afternoon, so the place was packed. The line stretched almost to the door, but we weren't in a hurry. We were just catching up, talking about her new job at the vet clinic and my plans to propose to my girlfriend. We've been waiting for about 10 minutes when this woman stormed in with 3 kids trailing behind her. The kids looked tired and cranky, probably around ages 6 to 10. The woman was huffing and puffing, looking around like she owned the place. She walked straight to the front of the line where my sister was standing. I was right behind her, scrolling through my phone. The woman rudely demanded that she needed to get in front of my sister. My sister looked confused and looked back at me. I stepped closer. My sister politely told her that the line started back there and that everyone had been waiting. The woman claimed her kids were starving and hadn't eaten all day, insisting she couldn't have them waiting in this ridiculous line. She demanded my sister just let her go first. My sister tried to explain that she understood, but everyone there had been waiting and it wouldn't be fair to let her cut. The woman got angry and started ranting about fairness, claiming she was a single mother trying to feed her children while my sister was worried about being fair. She asked what was wrong with my sister in a nasty tone. I could see my sister getting uncomfortable. She hates confrontation, but she also has a strong sense of what's right. My sister apologized but said they had been waiting too. She suggested maybe the woman could ask the manager if there was a faster way to order. The woman exploded, telling my sister not to dare tell her what to do and screaming that her kids were hungry right now. The whole restaurant started looking over. My sister's face was turning red with embarrassment, but she stood her ground. My sister apologized again but said she really couldn't let the woman cut in front of everyone because it wasn't right. That's when the woman completely lost it. Her face turned purple, and she started screaming about entitled young people and how nobody cares about struggling mothers. The kids looked mortified and other customers were starting to get angry. The woman called my sister a selfish little brat and yelled that she had no idea what it was like to be a real adult with real responsibilities. My sister tried to ask her to please lower her voice, mentioning her children were watching. The woman screamed that my sister shouldn't tell her about her children. Before anyone could react, she grabbed my sister by the shoulders and slammed her head forward into the edge of the counter. The sound was sickening, like a watermelon hitting concrete. My sister crumpled to the floor immediately, unconscious, blood starting to pool from a gash on her forehead. I saw red. Everything went silent for a split second, and then something primal kicked in. This woman had just assaulted my little sister, the person I protected my whole life. I launched myself at her without thinking. I've never been in a real fight before, but rage made me strong. I tackled her to the ground and started swinging. I wasn't thinking about technique or defense. I just wanted to hurt her the way she hurt my sister. She tried to scratch my face and pull my hair, but I kept hitting her. Other customers were screaming for me to stop and get off her. Someone yelled for someone to call the police. People were screaming, kids were crying, and several men were trying to pull me off the woman. I fought against them too, still trying to get to her. It took 4 people to restrain me. I was yelling that she had hurt my sister and demanding they look at what she did. I screamed that she could have killed her. By the time they got me under control, the woman was on the ground with a bloody nose, split lip, and what looked like the beginning of 2 black eyes. The paramedics arrived first, followed quickly by the police. I watched helplessly when they loaded my unconscious sister into the ambulance. The blood had soaked through the restaurant's towels they were using to stop the bleeding. I begged them to let me ride with her, but the police said they needed to talk to me first. The officer told me I needed to calm down and explain exactly what happened. I angrily told him that Psycho had attacked my sister and slammed her head into the counter because my sister wouldn't let her cut in line. Multiple witnesses backed up my story. The restaurant's security cameras caught everything too. The woman tried to claim self-defense, saying I attacked her first, but the footage clearly showed her assaulting my sister before I touched her. They arrested both of us initially, but after reviewing the evidence and taking witness statements, they released me without charges. The woman was charged with assault and battery. I pressed charges and got a restraining order. My sister ended up with 12 stitches, a concussion, and had to miss a week of work. But the doctors said she was lucky, a few inches different, and the woman could have done permanent damage or worse. The woman's ex-husband saw the news story and used it to get full custody of their kids. This wasn't her first violent outburst. She also got fired from her job when her employer saw the footage online. My sister made a full recovery, and we still laugh about how I went from zero to protective big brother in 3 seconds flat. She says she's never seen me move that fast. The woman got 6 months in jail and had to pay my sister's medical bills plus damages. I was 6 when my sister died. She was 17 and honestly we weren't super close because of the age gap, but I still remember bits and pieces of her. The way she laughed at her own jokes, how she was always painting her nails different colors, the movie posters covering her bedroom walls. After she passed, she became this perfect angel in my mom's eyes. I barely remember the funeral, just a lot of crying adults and flowers everywhere. When I was 12, I was helping Mom sort through some old boxes in the attic. That's when I found it. This simple silver ring with a small stone tucked away in one of my sister's jewelry boxes. Nothing fancy or expensive, just a regular ring that probably came from some high street shop. But when I slipped it on, it fit perfectly. I don't know why, but something about it felt right. I didn't make a big deal about it or ask permission. I just quietly took it and kept it in a little box in my room. For 7 years, that ring was mine. Not in some dramatic, life-changing way, but it was this one small thing that connected me to her. Sometimes when I missed her or wondered what she would have been like as an adult, I'd take it out and look at it. It wasn't about the ring itself, it was about having something that was just mine, my own piece of her memory that wasn't filtered through Mom's idealized version. Last weekend, we had one of our usual family Sunday lunches. My brother showed up with his girlfriend, and everyone could tell something was happening. He'd been acting nervous all week, and Mom kept making comments about how nice the girlfriend's hair looked and asking if she liked the roast. We all knew what was coming. Sure enough, halfway through dessert, my brother stands up and starts this whole speech about love and forever, and how he'd found his person. Everyone's smiling and getting their phones ready for photos. Then he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a ring box. When he opened it, I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. There it was, my sister's ring. The ring I'd kept safe for 7 years. The ring I thought was mine. My brother went on about how the ring was special because it belonged to someone very important to our family. He said he'd asked Mom and Dad about using it, and they thought it would be perfect. His girlfriend started crying happy tears. Everyone started clapping, and I just sat there feeling like the world had tilted sideways. I looked at Mom hoping for some explanation, but she just gave me this knowing smile like everything was perfectly normal. The rest of the proposal was a blur. People were hugging and congratulating them, and I was trying not to throw up. I excused myself to the bathroom and spent 10 minutes crying and trying to pull myself together. After dinner, when people started clearing dishes, I cornered Mom in the kitchen. I asked her straight out if that was my sister's ring. She confirmed it was, explaining that my brother had asked them about it last month. She said they thought it was sweet and symbolic, that my sister would have wanted it passed down to family. I told her that I'd had that ring for 7 years and it was never hers to give away. She just brushed me off, telling me not to be so dramatic about it because it was just a ring. Just a ring. When I had it, it was this meaningful connection to my sister, but now that it was convenient for them, it was just a ring. I completely snapped. I waited until most people had moved outside to the garden, then I pulled my brother aside. I told him I wanted the ring back. He asked what I was talking about, so I explained that the ring belonged to our sister and I'd had it for 7 years. I said Mom had no right to give it away. He actually laughed at first like I was joking. Then he told me no way, that it was an engagement ring now and I couldn't just take it back. I said fine, then I'd tell his girlfriend exactly where that ring came from and let her decide if she wanted to wear a dead girl's jewelry. That's when he got angry. He accused me of ruining his proposal and making everything about me like I always do. Mom appeared like she'd been listening the whole time, and she asked what all the shouting was about, saying everyone outside had noticed I wasn't happy during dinner and now I was causing a scene. I told her yeah, because I'd been crying in the bathroom after watching her give away something that wasn't hers. Dad tried to calm things down, but my brother wasn't finished. He called me selfish and said I'd been weird about our sister for years. He told me she'd been dead for over a decade and I needed to move on. I didn't even respond to that. I just grabbed my jacket and left. I could hear Mom calling after me, but I didn't stop. Yesterday, Mom called me. She asked if I'd calmed down and was ready to apologize to my brother and his fiancée. I told her, not really, and she hung up on me. An hour later, my cousin texted me. She'd heard about what happened from her mom. She said that what they did was messed up and she didn't blame me for being upset. She said that ring meant something to me. But I keep wondering if I handled it wrong. Maybe I should have been more mature about it, found a better way to bring it up. Maybe I was being selfish, like my brother said. The thing is, it's not really about the ring itself, it's about how they acted like my feelings didn't matter. Like those 7 years of me keeping something safe and meaningful were nothing. Like I was just this dramatic kid getting upset over jewelry. They turned my one personal connection to my sister into a prop for someone else's story. And when I tried to explain why that hurt, they made me feel crazy for caring. I haven't talked to any of them since Sunday. My phone keeps buzzing with family group chat messages that I'm ignoring. Part of me wonders if I should just let it go and pretend everything's fine. But another part of me thinks that if I back down now, they'll know they can walk all over me whenever it's convenient. So here I am, a week later, still wondering if I'm the problem or if my family really is as entitled as they seem. 3 years ago, my world changed when my son got diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He was 4 then, and suddenly all those little quirks I'd noticed made sense. The way he'd cover his ears at the grocery store, how he needed his special blanket arranged just right, why crowded places made him melt down. Getting the diagnosis was actually a relief because it meant we could finally help him properly. My son is 7 now and he's come so far. He's verbal and smart as a whip, but loud noises and big groups still overwhelm him. His therapist taught us coping strategies, and one of the biggest helps is his tablet with noise-canceling headphones. It gives him something to focus on when the world gets too much. We've learned that preventing meltdowns is way better than dealing with them after they happen. So when Thanksgiving rolled around this year, I packed his usual comfort kit. My aunt was hosting at her house, and I knew it would be packed with about 20 relatives. I brought his tablet, headphones, and his weighted lap pad. My aunt has always been the type who thinks she knows best about everything, but I figured one day would be fine. The dinner was going okay at first. My son sat next to me quietly watching videos on his tablet with his headphones on. He was actually doing great, no stimming, no signs of distress, just calm and content. A few relatives asked about the tablet, and I explained briefly that it helps him manage sensory overload. Most everyone was understanding, but about halfway through dinner, my aunt noticed. She told everyone loudly enough for half the table to hear that he shouldn't be on screens during family time and that I was spoiling him. I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my voice calm and polite as I explained that he was doing what helps him feel safe, and that this was a lot of noise for him. She scoffed and rolled her eyes like I'd said something ridiculous. Then she said that back in her day, they didn't coddle bad behavior, and that what he needed was a good spanking. The whole table went quiet. I looked at my son, who was starting to pull his headphones off because he could sense the tension. His little face was getting that worried look he gets before a meltdown. That's when something in me snapped. I stood up trying to keep my voice steady, but firm as I told her that, back in her day, kids like my son were institutionalized or abused for being different, and we weren't doing that. Karen's face turned bright red. She slammed her hand on the table, making several people jump, then yelled at me about how dare I disrespect my elders like that. She went on about how she raised 4 children just fine without any of this nonsense, and that I was raising a brat who was going to expect the world to cater to him. My son started whimpering and covering his ears. The noise, the anger, the attention, it was exactly what I'd been trying to prevent. I could see him starting to rock back and forth, which meant we were about 30 seconds from a full meltdown. I simply said we were leaving. Karen shouted, "That good, maybe next time I teach him some manners." I didn't even respond. I just started packing up our stuff as quickly as possible. My son was crying now, not the loud kind, but the quiet, overwhelmed kind that breaks my heart. A few relatives tried to convince me to stay, saying she didn't mean it. My uncle told me not to go because she was just set in her ways. My cousin asked if I couldn't just put the tablet away for an hour. I told him no, that I wasn't going to sacrifice my child's well-being to make her comfortable with her ignorance. I got my son's coat on and picked up his tablet bag. He was still crying and starting to stim with his hands. I knew we needed to get somewhere quiet fast. When we headed to the door, Karen wasn't finished. She ranted about how this was exactly what was wrong with my generation, that everything had to be an excuse, and that in her day, children sat quietly and behaved. I turned around one last time holding my crying son and told her that in her day, children like mine died in institutions because people like her thought they were broken instead of different. I said I'd rather have a happy, healthy child with a tablet than a traumatized one who learned to mask his needs to make adults comfortable. The room was dead silent when we left. I could hear Karen sputtering behind us, but I didn't care anymore. The car ride home was rough. My son had a full meltdown in his car seat, and it took almost an hour at home with his weighted blanket and favorite sensory toys before he calmed down. I felt horrible that I put him through that, but I also knew I couldn't have predicted how nasty she'd get. Later that evening, my cousin texted me saying that Karen cried after we left. The message said she claimed no one defended her and that I had embarrassed her in front of everyone. I stared at that text for a long time before responding that she embarrassed herself and I defended my child. My cousin texted back that she was just old school and that I knew how she was. I replied that being old school didn't excuse attacking a child with special needs, and that she was 60-something, not 90. I pointed out that autism awareness had been around for decades. My cousin didn't text back after that. The next day, a few relatives called to apologize for not speaking up. My uncle said he wished he'd said something sooner. My grandmother, who's actually older than Karen, called to say she was proud of me for protecting my son and that Karen was out of line. What really gets me is that Karen thinks she is the victim here. She attacked a 7-year-old child for using a medical accommodation, suggested physical violence, and then cried when people didn't rally to her defense. The entitlement is staggering. My son asked me the next day if he was bad for needing his tablet. It broke my heart that he'd internalized her nastiness. I explained that his brain works differently and that's not bad. It's just different. And people who love him will understand that. We're spending Christmas at my parents' house this year. They've already asked what they can do to make it comfortable for him. That's what real family does. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.